Welcome to week 9 of Bible Studies for Life. We're in the third lesson of this section of the studies going through this quarter here in the fall of 2023. So glad you've joined us today. I think we're going to enjoy this. A passage that, the story is probably familiar, but the exact passages we look at, it's a long book. We're going to be in the book of Job, and you know that story, so I'm excited about what we're going to see today. Before we look at the passage, be sure that you subscribe. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, like, comment, questions, put those in, and share with others. Appreciate it if you do that. If you want to help support our ministry, go to give.exposedtochrist.com right here, and you can help support what we're doing in teaching as well as the mission work that we've got going on. All right, let's look at Job. We're going to start here in chapter 30. Okay, so you kind of need to know the story before we get to this point, right? Job, if you don't know, read chapter 1 and 2, and you'll get a pretty good picture of what happens. But Satan comes to the Lord, asks if he can, it kind of derides Job because sure, Job loves you because you give him everything, and the Lord challenges Satan. Satan attacks. He has permission to do anything but kill Job, and he basically does. And Job has some friends that show up, and they tell him, look, there's probably some sin in your life. If you'd get rid of the sin in your life, then you'd be okay. And he's like, I don't think that's the case. I don't. And so in Job 30, we've got a statement by Job here, okay, where he is giving kind of his response to what's going on. And he says this, but when I hoped for good, evil came. When I looked for light, darkness came. I am churning within and cannot rest. Days of suffering confront me. I walk about blackened, but not by the sun. I stood in the assembly and cried out for help. I have become a brother to jackals and a companion of ostriches. My skin blackens and flakes off, and my bones burn with fever. My lyre is used for mourning, my flute for the sound of weeping. Job is depressed. I don't think that's a surprise, right? That's understandable. He has lost his family, his children. He's lost all of his possessions, his home. He's lost everything. And his friends are not really encouraging. His friends are basically, well, it's probably your fault, Job. Now, the Lord has things to say about the friends, but Job he's hurting. I mean, you see this. I hoped for good, but evil came. And I looked for light, but darkness came. And there is I thought things were going to get better, and they just got worse. And I tried to be positive, and it didn't happen. I said, well, what's the worst that could happen? And then it did. And I said, well, at least it can't get any worse. And then it did. Man, it's hard for him, right? He is really hurting. You see this churning within, cannot rest, days of suffering. He looks forward, and all he sees is suffering. We can feel for Job, can't we? He's going through a time that is harder than we can imagine, no doubt. It's more difficult than we would ever want to wish on anyone, even our worst enemies. We wouldn't wish these things, right? How terrible it is. And he talks about walking about blackened and stood in the assembly, and he cried out for help. Job is at the bottom. He is at the very bottom here. And we can feel it, can't we? And there's a little bit of Job. Look, we use this phrase, we talk about the patience of Job, right? The patience of Job. And boy, he has patience, don't we? But as you read the story, I think for me, the one thing that kind of stands out to me about Job is he's got a little bit of pride. He's got a little pride. Now, his friends are telling him, the reason this has happened is because of some sin in your life. But we know the backstory, and we know that that's not the case, that the Lord said Job is a great man and gave the devil permission to punish him. He hadn't done anything to deserve what he got. We look at that in a sense, right? He was punished and attacked by Satan. But he says, hey, it's not any sin that I've committed, basically. And there's a little bit of pride. I'm pretty good. I really shouldn't have gone through this. I don't deserve any of this, right? But he is at the bottom. I mean, you read all of this and you see this. He is at the bottom. His life is tough. Well, the Lord comes and has a little, has some statements to make. And it's not it's probably helpful to go read what the Lord has to say when you get there. I think it's probably 38, 39, 40, 41 in there, those chapters. But we come here to 42. Okay, so the Lord has spoken, and now Job is responding to what the Lord has said. And we see a little bit of difference in Job, who's kind of throwing this off on the Lord. And you shouldn't have done this. This shouldn't have happened to me. And Job replies to the Lord, well, I know that you can do anything, and no plan of yours can be thwarted. And you asked, who is this who conceals my counsel with ignorance? Surely I spoke about things I did not understand, things too wondrous for me to know. Okay, Job gets a dose of humility, and that's why I kind of see this as a little bit of pride, and I see Job here kind of acknowledging this, right? He says, look, Lord, I know you can do anything. You'll do whatever you want to do. And so he's responding to some things that the Lord has said to Job. He says, you asked, who is this one that conceals my counsel with ignorance? In other words, who's this dumb guy? Who's this guy who doesn't know what he's talking about? He thinks he does, but he has no clue what he's talking about. And look what Job says. Well, I spoke about things I didn't know. Lord, you're right. I didn't know. I had no right to say anything because I didn't know. I was ignorant. I didn't understand what I was talking about. I was just talking. I was given the human approach. I was given man-centered approach. I was given what I thought about it, and I didn't know anything about it, right? It says, these things are too wondrous for me to know. My accusations against you, my thoughts about what ought to happen to me, I didn't have a right to speak about that because, truthfully, I didn't know. And this is great, right? This acknowledgement of his own sin, acknowledgement of his own hubris and thinking that he understood when he didn't. And the friends were the same way. They didn't understand, but they spoke, right? But Job's not responsible for what they said. He's just responsible for what he says. And here he says, look, I didn't understand. I thought I did, but I didn't. I was wrong. I shouldn't have. And then this next section, he said, you said, listen now and I will speak. When I question you, you will inform me. Well, I'd heard reports about you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore, I reject my words and am sorry for them. I am dust and ashes. Whew, the Lord got after him, right? The Lord said, you listen, and I'm going to speak. You just shut your mouth, and I'm going to tell you some things, right? And when I question you, you're going to inform me. You tell me. You got all the answers. You tell me. And look, he says, I'd heard about you, but now I've seen you. So I reject my words and am sorry for them. I am dust and ashes. Job understands at this point that he doesn't understand. You know, there's this thing about what we know, and we know that we know it, and then the things that we know that we don't know. And Job's problem was that he thought he knew things that he did not know. He did not understand everything that he didn't know. And now he's saying, you know what? All that stuff I thought I knew, I actually didn't know. And for me to speak as if I knew them, that was wrong. And I'm sorry for that. This is, well, you talk about repentance. This is repentance right here, right? I reject the words that I used because I didn't know what I was saying. I was wrong to say those things. Those were not words that I had. Okay. The whole thing this time is about suffering. And I think the key thing that I think we can take from this is that nobody can answer the question about suffering. There is no adequate answer about why we suffer at different times. What we do know is that God is faithful, right? That God is just. We have to go to these things that we know about the Lord. He is faithful. He is just. He loves us. He desires what is best, which may not make us comfortable or may not be easy for us. And there are times when he will do things that are beyond our understanding, and we just need to be content with him being who he is and us being who we are, and recognize, I don't understand, I don't know, it's beyond me, and so I'm going to have to trust. I'm going to have to put faith in God to walk me through this because of the things that I know about God. The things that I know about God help me walk through the times when I don't know the things I don't know about my situation. I have to trust him. And the reality is None of us can say we don't deserve anything. We don't deserve this hard time. We don't deserve this trouble. The truth is, we don't deserve mercy. That's the definition of mercy, right? We don't deserve God's grace. Those are the things we know we don't deserve. And so we have to trust that the Lord will take care of us in the middle of whatever we're going through, and that our questioning of Him, while it may be our natural inclination, and it's all right, I think it's okay to say those things and to get it out, ultimately we have to trust the Lord. And so I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to be done with it. I'm going to say, but the reality is I don't know. I just don't know. I'm just going to have to trust that God knows. Hey, I hope that's helped as you go through this study. You know, if you've got time this week, you can read the whole book, or certainly read the first 4 or 5 chapters and read the last 4 or 5 chapters. That'll help with the book of Job, right? Be sure and subscribe, like, comment, share. We'll see you next time.